Was the Treaty of Versailles fair? In this video, we will be covering all the bullet points in the syllabus. First, we have the three big old men, the big three. We have Clemenceau with a thick layer beard and little hair on his head. He represented France and its ferocity. They were hungry for revenge. Next, we have Lloyd George on the left with more hair but less beard. Better balance in hair distribution, which indicates how he has a balance between stances. He also has happy eyes, which indicates how he is less rigid or one-sided in his aims. Last but not least, we have Woodrow Wilson. No beard, thin hair, but looking in those sharp eyes, we can see world peace and idealism. So what do each of them want? Clemenceau, strict grandpa who is representing his angry people. Heavy reparation on Germany, take all their empires, resources, weapons. He wanted to weaken Germany so there is no possibility for future invasion. They shared the border and France was heavily damaged, so French were locked in for that revenge. Next, on the complete opposite pole, we have Woodrow Wilson, our idealist guy. Like a dove, he has his 14 points: self-determination, disarmament, freedom of colonies, no secret affairs, the creation of League of Nations. Also no reparation and a continuation in trading with Germany, which we can imagine how Clemenceau reacted. Lastly, our most malleable guy. This totally doesn't mean he has no aims. This sneaky guy wanted not too heavy reparation to satisfy the British public for his election but guarantee future trade with Germany. Wow. He wanted to expand British Empire and Britain controls more sea to trade. He's all after the benefits. Here is the context that explains why each person want what they want. First, French and British people lost a lot so they were angry and wanted heavy punishment. Plus, Lloyd George was running for elections so he aims to bring terms that satisfy the British the most. On the other hand, USA joined war later so they got less damage, so Woodrow Wilson wasn't after the revenge. For Germany, they weren't allowed in the conference and forced to sign the treaty, which made German people feel offended. Why did victors not get everything they wanted? Simply, because they were leaders dealing with the devastating consequences of World War I and people were relying on them. It was urgent and full of pressure. They couldn't afford to be too selfish, which might lead to failed negotiation. So how can you remember the terms of the treaty? Use BRAT, the acronym for your categories, and everything will be easy peasy. First, B in BRAT stands for blame. The treaty states that Germany was responsible for the start of World War I. The war guilt was put on Germany in clause 231, which helped justify all the harsh punishment coming afterwards. Also, Germany wasn't allowed to join the League of Nations because of its guilt. Next, R stands for reparation, which Germany had to pay £6.6 billion. The A stands for army. To exclude the risk of another world war happening, Germany had to disarm. They had no tanks, airplanes or submarines. 100,000 soldiers but no conscription allowed. 6 battleships. Nonetheless, Rhineland was demilitarized because of how close it was to France, which could be a threat if not demilitarized. T for the territory taken away. Alsace-Lorraine was given to France. Danzig became a free city. Saar would be under the League's control for 15 years until a plebiscite was allowed. It lost land to Poland. They lost their African mandates and Anschluss was banned. Next, we'll discover how the treaty terms impact Germany. Economically, hyperinflation occurred. The government was printing more money to pay the £6.6 billion. But more money on paper doesn't mean more money. The depreciation of money resulted in food, such as bread, becoming unimaginably unaffordable. This led to starvation. Moreover, workers went on strike to stop France from exploiting their resources. Socially and politically, people were furious because the treaty was a diktat and Anschluss was banned, separate families and friends. They called the treaty a diktat, which they were forced to sign, and blamed politicians who signed the treaty for ruining the country. Starvation and unemployment. The devastation in people catalyzes for the rise of Hitler and fascism. Extreme idea was what they were looking for. Our last and most important question to determine whether the treaty was fair or not is, could the treaty be justified at the time? The answer is, there are contemporary, contrasting opinions. First, in Germany, they all opposed and hated the treaty. For them it was too harsh because they were insulted by the blame. They stroked to not pay the reparation since paying £6.6 billion means starvation for the population. They were angry that 14 points by Wilson weren't benefiting them and they felt insulted, fragile when forced to disarm. Around the world, the opinions are diverse. Some agree with the treaty because Germany declared war on Russia and Germany invaded Belgium, which directly provoked war with Britain and France. On the other hand, some argue that in a war, everyone is responsible. Plus, Austria and Hungary should take the blame because they had a conflict with Serbia. Germany was just defending them. Second, some said the reparation was too harsh because it had a destructive impact on German economy. The amount required was too large for the country that they asked help from American Door's plan. Yet, Germany only had to pay the first 2.5 billion. For the army, it made too harsh when we see how helpless Germany was when France invaded the Ruhr. Despite of that, they still started World War II with limited military, so it may not be harsh enough. Lastly, territory, mandates, borders taken, yet they still did Anschluss later and Saar came back to their hands, so how fair is the treaty? The answer is controversial.
Goodbye!